You're listening to BQN. Assimilate the audio. Welcome, listeners, to another episode of All Good Things, a Star Trek Universe podcast here on BQN and the Fandom Podcast Network. I'm your host, Amy, and with me today are Mark, Christos, and Kelvin. We have a full house, finally, after everyone's done with their vacations. Mark.
Everybody? Excuse?
Thanks for keeping the show going.
Oh, you're welcome. It was a blast. Oh, my goodness. Captain Jeremiah and Davey kept your seats warm. And oh my God, we had all the giggles the last couple of episodes. So anyway, welcome back. I know we're gonna have a fun time. But yeah, you guys were giggling on the cruise. We were giggling in the recording booth.
Excellent. Christos, long time no see.
Hello. I feel like I've been, in a temporal vortex somewhere.
I know. And so we were on the cruise together, and then you came out to Las Vegas. However, I was away back down to Puerto Vallarta, so I didn't get to see you this week. Gosh darn it.
I know it was all business in Vegas anyway. So it was kind of good that you were gone. And I didn't quite have a lot of time for fun, but yeah, I feel really good to be back. Just kind of hopefully next few weeks, I can just stay in one place for a while.
Yeah, get back to normal. And
Right.
Kelvin, are you back to normal after the cruise? Has life settled in for you?
The land has stopped shaking. So, yeah, I've got my ground legs back now. A week's a long time, though. It is good to be back. I really felt your absence last week. And how was Puerto Vallarta? Did you round up more gays for the collective, Amy? I thought you would have had enough after the cruise.
I did find another wonderful couple. Yes, we were walking down the romantic zone. I was like, oh, I've been here. I was here. We went to Blondie's and got our little slushies. It was just wonderful. Yes. So, you know me. Well, you guys, we have this new segment, Escape Pod. This is, something fun.
This is the bridge. All hands to emergency escape pods.
Escape pod.
So, spoilers, listeners, as of this recording, we have seen up to episode 5 of season 3 Picard. So we're going to, share our thoughts so far. Christos, let's start with you.
Well, first off, I can tell you, I could not wait for this episode. I woke up in my Vegas hotel room at 5:00 in the morning, couldn't sleep, put my AirPods on, got out my iPad and watched this in bed. And I think I was screaming out loud. So I can just say season continues to deliver great episode after great episode. And spoiler alert, the reintroduction of, I almost said Ensign Ro, Commander Ro, blew my socks off. I loved her story arc. And she's not a cameo, she's a guest star. I mean, she's literally in the whole episode. I loved it.
Yeah, that really annoys me online when people are saying, oh, she had a cameo. It's like, it's not a cameo. She had a guest. She was in the main credits.
Cameo is a scene. She had the whole episode.
Yeah, she gave an explosive performance.
Oh, too soon, Mark.
My goodness.
Amy, you've been on the fence about Ensign Ro / Commander Ro in the past. How did you feel about it?
Yes. Well, after doing the character profile on Galaxy class helped me to understand a little bit more. But my goodness, this episode completes her story arc and explains her decision. And it's so brilliant. I absolutely love that they found this one character that I didn't even know I needed closure on and created this beautiful story and complex relationship with Picard. And now we know so much more about Picard because of Commander Ro. It was brilliant. I mean, hats off to the writers for bringing her back.
Yeah. That line he says, I've been rehearsing this conversation for 30 years. I was like, wow, you could tell how affected Picard was by what she did.
Mhm.
And I don't know if that was Journey's End or no, that was
Preemptive
Wesley
Journey's
Ryan.
End.
Preemptive Strike. I always get those two mixed up in my head. Anyways,
I've-
but yeah. Yeah. Go ahead, Mark.
I've talked to Amy in the past about there's certain things in life that for me like I struggle with, and one of those things is like friendships or relationships with people that you put a lot of effort into, and they're very special and meaningful, and then without seemingly any notice or reason, these people just disappear out of your life, and it hurts. That's one of the things that hurts me like the most in my life. Like it just, yeah, it's very, very difficult for me to deal with these things more than some people. It just really affects me. And so that whole thing I could relate to so much, because it's like, yes, it was a working relationship between the two of them, but it was more than that, because it was this mentor-mentee relationship. They had gone through so much in her time, on the Enterprise, and he really fought for her and was an advocate for her, and then for her to do that. And so yeah, I could understand like the years that went by, and you just relive those moments. What could I have done differently? What could I have said differently? Like and for them to have that sort of moment, like I felt it. I felt that.
Yeah, I totally felt it. I thought it was so intense there between them for a few minutes there. I almost thought they were going to reveal that they had a physical relationship. I really thought that's how deep the emotion was. I thought they were maybe even had been closer. They were going to reveal they'd had an affair or something like that, but it didn't go there, and I'm glad it didn't.
Thank God it didn't.
Yeah. So on the flip side, I'm going to give you a little bit of a critique here. Is it a little bit too much to think about, like, in this particular season of Picard, suddenly all these relationships are coming back? Hadn't seen Beverly in over 20 years. Well, here she is. Now I hadn't seen Ro in almost 30 years. Now here she is. Like, all this stuff is happening in a matter of days for Picard. Like, is it too convenient? I mean, I'm loving every minute of it. So let me put this in the right context. But when you take back and you take it to the 50,000 foot level and look at the season, is it too much fan service in a sense that everyone's just coming back all at once?
I think it's necessary. It's like Big Bang, they all sort of went their separate ways after a certain thing. And even though time has passed, they're all necessary to come together to solve whatever this big thing is. Like, it makes sense. Terry's not just throwing people in there willy-nilly. Like, the reason Ro was there, it made sense for the story, and I love it.
Well,
Amy.
one thing that I like with this, and if you look at all the seasons, like generally speaking, when you look at, oh, who's your favorite captain? Oh, Captain Picard, because it's utopia and he can do no wrong and he has all the right answers. That's the general idea where, other captains are flawed. Picard was perceived as the right one. Now with this, and you look at all 3 seasons, his relationships and accepting love that we saw last season, his relationship accepting trust. And now we're getting this still, he is very flawed. He spent 30 years thinking he was right, but he was wrong. He didn't see
Holding a
Ro.
grudge.
He didn't accept her. And so we're getting these flaws that are showing up in Picard now in his final life part. And it really makes sense. And we're seeing him for who he is and still loving him. You still love flawed people.
Mm-hmm.
You
Kelvin?
tend to love flawed people more, actually, because it's a well-known trait of when you make yourself vulnerable and you're not seen as this perfect person, that you're more real somehow. So it applies to like the world of work as well as personal relationships, that people tend to appreciate you more when you are more rounded and you admit that you've got flaws.
I'm sitting here thinking that down the road, we can punt this one, but down the road, it might be interesting to have like a captain, comparison series where we go back and forth between 2. And I'd love to see between Jean-Luc and also Captain Pike, because Captain Pike is like the future, captain. Like he's who people are gravitating towards now is like, oh yeah, this is like the best captain ever. Like we love Pike. He's so empathetic, blah, blah, blah. But just looking at the two of them, because they've both been held in pretty high esteem, to see what the pros and cons are of each. I don't know.
That might be
Oh,
fun
another
episode
series
topic.
might be popping up.
I say let's punt that to after season 2 finishes. I think we need a little bit more Pike. That will have some more input on the character.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
But, that might be like 6 months out, but I like the idea of that. I like the, we didn't get a chance to really talk about episode 4 as much, but we saw the same thing with Riker in the last episode, where he had to come down and finally tell Picard, you were right for calling me out about that and the hurt that I'm carrying, and the fear of losing people has come to me, and just being empty, and how he could, we're getting a little bit of insight into what's been wrong with him and Deanna, because he's basically checked out and he's lost his empathy in a sense. He's not feeling anything. And that's kind of reawakening, and the true Star Trek-y moment of seeing new life and new civilizations born, and that, kind of gave Riker hope again, and that all happened in an episode. I'm like, it's so Star Trek. I love it.
If you think back to what Terry said, he's giving us that 10-hour final movie that we want. So this is the opportunity to wrap so much up. And if you just think of season 7 of TNG in general, so much of that season was about family and tying up kind of guest stars, but clearly there was a lot more to do. And just to say my piece on Ensign Ro, she's one of my favorite characters, and I just did not think we would be getting this. So it was just such a surprise. I don't know how I avoided spoilers, but it made it all the more sweet to see it. And yeah, I just remember screaming at the TV after the initial joy. I hope they don't kill her. And so, yeah, a lot of ugly crying ensued after the end of the episode. But here's someone that I've loved for 30 years, just to kind of, like what you've just said, Mark, about people disappearing. Here's someone who reappeared, and it brought all the feels with it. So it was probably the most emotional I've been watching Star Trek. This week. It was a very, very powerful episode. And for someone like Michelle Forbes as well, who is kind of known for being a little bit done with the franchise, it was just great that they managed to get her on board.
Well,
as well.
They wrote her this. They wrote her the most fantastic story that one, actor can have, where you have the entire range of emotions and your character goes through the entire thing. This whole story within an episode, it's like she had to. If she's an actress and she enjoys acting, like this, she can't say no to it. It was just written so perfectly. I do want to say one thing though about Michelle Forbes. When I was watching this, I kept thinking at the beginning she was all Admiral Kane from Battlestar Galactica, and then she pivoted back to the Ro that we knew, and that pivot was like, wow. Anyway, kudos to her. She deserves an Emmy.
That's exactly what I was going to say. You know what I watched yesterday? The Pegasus episode from Battlestar Galactica, because it's one of my favorite BSG episodes. I love the audio, the music, and the score at the beginning of that episode. I can listen to it all day. But I watched. I'm like, oh, there's Admiral Kane, and you're right. She's like Admiral Kane until that heated exchange in the holodeck, and then Ro comes back in. Amy, you were going to say something.
Yes. So let's talk about Changeling Jack. What is going on there? He has now this ability that turns on. Is he some kind of sleeper agent that like Ash Tyler / Vogue was? Like, does Jack know what he is? I don't know. I want your thoughts. How was that story revealed in this episode? Mark, let's start with you.
Well, somebody should have gave him a Snickers. No, so with Jack, there was some thought, some back and forth in the previous. If you listen to previous episodes of All Good Things, I had some theories, and one of them was that it was mentioned that he was wearing like a necklace or something. And I thought, oh, maybe that was maybe that contained like some sort of psychic energy that, when he touched it, it was like it's like that probe for Picard. Like he just experienced these things, and so this necklace or talisman that he found on some planet is giving him information to like a future, and they all want the information, so they have to find him. So that was sort of where my thoughts were at initially. But after this week's episode, I'm not sure. I mean, maybe that could still be it, but it is interesting the multiple voices, some of which, one of which being Beverly, seeing whatever the red tendrils are, and that door that's very much like an antique wooden door. It's very curious, because if we are going a route of it being Borg, wouldn't it be like hyper futuristic, and wouldn't the tendrils be more like electronic instead of organic? Everything looks very organic.
So, Mark, you said Borg. Why do you say Borg?
Well, you guys were talking about Borg.
Oh, we talked about that. That was before we started recording. So, listeners, listeners, little
my bad, Boo.
Because it's you're good. It's technically not a spoiler because it has been released by Paramount. But if you listen to, or if you watch the subtitles for the episode 4 at the end, as Jack is hearing voices, it specifically says the Borg Queen is one of the voices. So, is Jack Borg? And if he is Borg, how is he Borg? Is he Borg because Locutus, technically, or Picard has nanites still in his bloodstream, and when he impregnated Beverly, that was passed on, and they have a Borg hybrid, half human, half Borg, or all Borg, however you call that. And is he Borg? I don't know that he's a changeling, by the way, because he would be needing to regenerate. We've established that changelings still need to regenerate, and Jack isn't doing that, but there's obviously something going on with them. So I'm leaning toward he's part Borg, and the Queen is trying to activate him.
I just hope that they don't kind of undo the whole Jack is Picard's son and he's some kind of weird alien or accident or creation in a non-traditional manner. Considering they released the information so early on, the confirmation he is Picard's son, I hope he's not another Jason Vigo, put it that way. So that, you invest in this idea of Picard's got a son, only to find out in episode 9, oh, he's a creation, an imposter. So that's what I don't want to see.
Agreed.
Do you guys... Okay, what's your opinion? Do you guys think that at the end of the story, Picard's son should saddle up and join Starfleet? Or do you think he should just be a rogue, What are your thoughts?
I don't want another Wesley. Beverly doesn't need another Wesley either. She can have her rogue.
Well, the thing that we learn in this episode is that Picard needs to not have these expectations and not have his love be conditional like it was with Ro. So hopefully he has learned from that 30-year storing anger and finally sees Ro. Oh my gosh, that line, I was in tears. And hopefully he can do that with Jack, because Jack's like, you're a brilliant man, but you sure are stupid thinking that I want anything to do with Starfleet. Like Jack has made it very clearly known he's not interested in Starfleet. So it's up to Picard to accept that choice and still love him. Kelvin.
But there could be the whole Starfleet redemption. Don't forget, Jack hates Starfleet because his father has chosen Starfleet over family. And I know he didn't know he had the family, but Jack has got strong feelings about Starfleet after the secret bar scene. So I think there could be a relaxation of Jack's views about Starfleet. Who knows? But I don't want there to be.
Christos.
I don't know. I think there's a little bit more to the why Jack doesn't like Starfleet. I feel like he already had a bad taste for Starfleet long before he knew about Picard or went back 5 years ago and had witnessed that conversation or anything. I think there's a lot more coming, which is I think why this season's so amazing. Like there's just every time we think we're figuring it out, we get totally taken on another direction.
Right. I do have to, before we move on, just play a little continuity card with this episode. So they got something a little wrong, and it took me out a little bit. You know the fantastic scene in the turbo lift where Shaw's talking about crashing the D on Viridian 3 and kissing Anij in Insurrection. He talks about the spatial anomaly in the Deveron system from All Good Things. That didn't happen. It did not happen because it was at the end of All Good Things. Picard says there is no signs of a spatial anomaly in the Deveron system. So it was just in Q's timeline that nobody else experienced apart from Picard.
Okay, in my headcanon, he still wrote a report about it. And those people experienced it and remembered it, whether they are the only ones, but it's still recorded in history. And that's how I'm doing that. Mark?
Right.
No, I was doing this right here meme. No, I 100% agree with you.
Oh,
All of that was exactly what I would have said. So we're good.
I'll let you off then.
First, I was very suspicious of Beverly. Like, there's been like, hey, what does Beverly know? What is her part in all of this? Is she a changeling? Is Beverly kidnapped somewhere and this is an imposter herself? That there's been a lot of that going on. Like, what does Beverly know? On the flip side, we've watched Beverly become Dr. Commander Beverly Crusher a lot over the last 2 or 3 episodes. Everything from physically, like, oh, she's got a comm badge on. Now she's got a blue jacket on. Now she seems to be in charge of sickbay, and Dr. Oak is just taking second fiddle to her. But in this last episode, we literally saw her sciencing her way through the situation, doing the autopsy on the changeling and just using the scientific method to try to solve the problem. So I'm backing off on my idea that she's an imposter and she's being pivotal to trying to solve the problem. And I feel like if she was a changeling, she wouldn't be trying to do that.
well, and I think in this episode, it clearly demonstrates she's not, because remember, they're like a way to identify is if they have, the long memories. And when she recounts to Jack, oh, you had these nightmares, I can tell you're not sleeping. I think that was our proof that she's not a changeling.
Yes. Well, and even the exchange between her and Picard, I mean, that was so emotional. Even how many times did we see, whether that first scene where Beverly and Picard see each other and the emotion's super high, and she kind of just with her eyes tells him that that's his kid. And then the exchange in the following episode in sickbay, it's very similar to how he figured out that Ro wasn't a changeling. So
Right. Yeah.
It was based on emotional conversations, not things people could just know by fact.
Well, one person that we haven't seen is Deanna Troi, and I'm very upset, hoping that we will see her soon. But we today get to discuss Deanna Troi and her command test in our series, Kobayashi Maru, Part 2, Thine Own Self, which is the Next Generation Season 7 episode number 16. Now, previously in the series, we have covered the Lower Decks episode entitled Kobayashi Maru, which is where we got this series title from. Kelvin, you want to give us a quick recap on what is Thine Own Self?
I shall indeed. Very much a story of 2 halves. There's an A plot and a B plot. Let's give credit to the B plot because it's where we're going to focus our discussion today. So Deanna returns to the Enterprise following a class reunion, and she's not feeling very fulfilled in her role. She wants to do more. Has a little bit of a chat with Beverly and talks about the possibility of undertaking the bridge officer test so that she can take some command shifts on the ship. And the story is all about how she gets through that. Meanwhile, there's a story involving Data is on an away mission. He's gone to collect some radioactive fragments from Barkon 4, Barkon 5. And he is damaged, wanders into a village and loses his memory. So has to find out who he is and cure the village from radiation poisoning.
Very good. So we are going to really focus on Deanna Troi because she's the one who's coming up against her Kobayashi Maru. So yeah, let's dissect this a little bit more. Troy's coming back from a class reunion. And as you said, Kelvin, just not feeling as fulfilled as she should in her life, and goes to Beverly because Beverly's on the night watch, which is fabulous to see, and also goes to Riker. Now, I was wondering, have you guys ever like been to a reunion and then like, oh, maybe sort of compared yourself, like where are you at with the others of my age group? Has that changed anything in your life because of, I guess you could say, comparing yourselves to peers of your same age?
I can't say I've ever been to a class reunion.
Oh,
Not certainly high school. And I'm trying to think of a way of phrasing this that doesn't make me sound like I'm really up myself, but I'm kind of a high achiever when it comes to kind of the small town that I'm from. So I can't imagine that comparing myself with other people. I think a lot of people from where I'm from are very traditional, go down the kind of the family route, and I've gone down the career route. I've certainly had reunions informally with friends I made with university who live in different corners of the country now, but that's always just been very social, and there is no kind of competitive nature between that. But they were all very happy for me when they found out I became a company director of where I work. So there was that aspect to it. But I can definitely understand Deanna's feeling of not being actualized, or she can do more as a result of seeing what Beverly's done and the experience in Disaster a couple of years ago. So that kind of the pure ambition of Troi and recognizing I've still got a lot more to give, I do recognize that within myself.
Christos?
Well, first off, Kelvin, we know you're a high achiever. We've seen you on Trexperts, so we know you. We know you've got that competitive drive in you. I personally have not gone to any high school reunions. I don't like to define myself by what some people look at high school, look back. There are people who look back at high school as like the most important time of their life. And I'm like, I didn't even know what the hell was going on. And yet, I mean, it was just like, I'm just getting going. So I don't look back at high school that way. And I've never really looked back. I moved away from my town as soon as I went to college. I feel like this is just like a pivotal moment for Deanna. Every once in a while, we look back at ourselves and ask ourselves, hey, am I in a rut? Am I just coasting? Am I just getting, doing day in, day out? And honestly, like you were saying, Kelvin, a little bit of what, looking back on her performance in the Disaster episode and knowing that she probably would have done better in that situation had she had more training, it kind of motivated her. And of course, seeking out Beverly as a mentor, to ask why Beverly took the bridge officer's test and became a commander. I think it all kind of hits her at the right moment in life to decide she wants more.
Yeah, I feel like, both of you guys, it never was something that really interested me. It feels so far in the rearview mirror. My mom's always like, hey, do you remember this person or that person you went to school? I'm like, yeah, I kind of don't. I'm sorry. Like, I've been more time outside of that town, outside of, high school than I was there. And so at this point, you choose to hang on to things or let go of things. And I've let go of quite a lot. But with that said, we did have a reunion of sorts with my dance school. They had an anniversary for the school I was in for dance while I was growing up. And they invited all the alumni back to participate in a big, dance number. And they sent us all DVDs, and people flew in from Hawaii and wherever just to come and do this thing. And that was a lot of fun. There was a lot of people that showed up that I didn't think would, and got to reconnect, but it was in like a fun sort of, we're all just doing this to have a good time kind of feel, rather than, oh, let's catch up and see who had babies and where you're living and what you're doing now. It was like, no, we have a purpose. We're all going to perform this dance number together, but we're not going to take ourselves so seriously because, obviously for some of us, it's been 15, 20 years since the last time we were on a stage dancing at all. So we just had fun with it and goofed around and laughed. And so for that, I had a lot of fun, but that's as close as I've ever come to that kind of thing.
Wow. Your guys' experience are so different from mine. Listeners, I am not as strong as willed as these fine men here. I was a wreck at my reunions. The 5-year reunion was terrible. I don't even know why, but I went back to my 10-year reunion. And that's the one where it's like everyone was starting their families, they're all married, they're into their career, they've graduated. Here I was barely out of university, a failed marriage, no children. What is going on with my life? It was just terrible. I felt such pressure and I was like, what's wrong with me? Because everyone else is doing so well. Now, fast forward to a 20-year reunion where I, as you said, Mark, you just got to let things go. And I did wisen up. But yeah, no, and hearing Troy's like, oh, I went to a Clash reunion. Yes, I have felt that pressure of why aren't you as good as, or it was me, obviously my perception of, oh, everyone else is doing better than me. And it was a bit motivational. Thankfully, I didn't spiral down, but it really got me to refocus on what do I want out of my life. So I think Troi had that moment as well. Christos.
Amy, I wouldn't feel too bad about it. So I think the difference between all of our stories here and yours is, I think as gay men, of a certain age, high school wasn't the best experience for a lot of us. I think I don't look back. I was bullied. I was called faggot. So I just moved on, in a good way. It didn't define me, so I don't need to look back at those moments, and I don't owe those people anything, and I don't need to compare myself to them, because I don't see any of them trying to reach out to me to apologize for their actions. So why do I even owe them my time? So that's the difference. I think a lot of guys my age who are gay have similar stories.
Well, I wanted to say I completely agree with everything Christos has just said. It's a very narrow lens that we're looking through there as the gays. I wanted to just add, though, with this kind of Troi development, if you think about it, she did have a very busy season 7, didn't she? She started a new romance with Worf. She went down this route. Do you think in the writing this was become of its time? It's the final season. Traditional 80s views might seem a little bit boring. And do you think they just thought, why would you just have a counselor sat there on the bridge? All these kind of little critiques maybe that fans have made over the years of what does Troi do? Do you think they just tried to address that by saying, let's make her more of an official officer with traditional duties, a woman in command, and that's the way they were taking it rather than it just be Deanna's motivation?
So I think there's 2 points here, and I think you're exactly right. I think, first off, it's the last season. They're trying to wrap up some storylines. One of the critiques that TNG always had was that, well, what does Deanna really do? She just sits there and says, I said something. And so they were trying to really give the character, much better stories in season 6 and 7. And I think that was also Jerry Taylor's influence. I believe she was showrunner by season 7. You see that with Beverly and Troi. They're both getting better stories. They're both getting some meat to their stories. And, I feel like as much as TNG wasn't supposed to be serialized, you started to see these story arcs. The only critique I have of this whole Troi storyline is it happened really fast. It was all in half an episode, so to speak, and it probably should have taken place over several months. Otherwise, I love what they do for Troi in this episode.
So a little bit of trivia to go along with that to answer your question. Ronald D. Moore explained he got the idea from reading Jerry Taylor's novelization of Unification. So that was season 5? or something. Yeah. So he continues to say there's a line where Troi is reflecting on her experiences from disaster where she got command. And Jerry had written something about that, like tasting blood and wanting to again. And it really stuck with Moore. He's like, that would be an interesting direction to take Troi. So the seed started, thankfully, we had Jerry Taylor writing women's perspectives there. But there was a little bit of critique, like, why is Troi getting promoted over Geordi or Worf, who have definitely had more command reasons to get promoted? Kelvin.
Yeah, that the logistics of this process, I'm a little bit at odds with. And I almost think it was kind of thrown into the story just to kind of explain why Beverly is a full commander, as opposed to the workings of Starfleet. You know, they call it a bridge officer's test. You know, well, Data isn't a commander; he's lieutenant commander, and he's the second officer on the ship. So why is this a requirement for Troi? It's almost like a leadership conversion course from when you're in a science background. You know, so if you're very discipline based, if you're an engineer, an old grease monkey who wants to become a captain, or whether you're a counselor who wants to become a captain, like Ezri Dax maybe in the books, you go on this kind of leadership course. But to call it a bridge officer's test just kind of sets my continuity brain on fire with, you know, you had Ensign Harry Kim in command of the night shift on Voyager. What has this got to do with being a commander? And also, if you pass this test, does that automatically mean you are then promoted? So, you know, could Worf just say, I want to do this test too and become a commander? Or do you have to be promoted in recognition of something? So the process that sat behind it kind of, I'm not saying it ruined the story. I love this episode, but it just kind of puts me in work mode, should we call it.
I do feel
Mark?
like she passed a whole bunch of other qualifications before she got to that. And they even mentioned it on screen. She had passed this, passed that, passed this. And that was like the final thing before she, you know, got it. It does kind of throw me out of it that they called it a bridge officer's test and not just the Kobayashi Maru, because it's already been set in Star Trek, where they need to take the Kobayashi Maru to get that promotion. So why not just call it Kobayashi Maru? I don't know.
It's not the Kobayashi Maru, far from it. It's not a no-win scenario. There's a very easy win to the scenario. Kobayashi Maru was the name of the ship in the Kobayashi Maru. It's an actual full-on test. So this, not wanting to undermine the title of this episode, this was not a Kobayashi Maru test. It was just, can you order someone to their death? I would. So Kelvin, I would argue that when you know, she had to kill Geordi to win. So that was a no-win scenario. Something bad had to happen, you know, but you had to make that choice. I mean, there was a way out of the situation. So you're right. It could have been an evolution of the Kobayashi Maru test, because in a sense, she had to do something that would result in somebody's death. I think what really bugs me, I think you're all hitting on the same point here, is that it just happens too fast. I love that there's, you know, like Mark referenced, there's so many other things she had to do. So it's more than just the one test in the holodeck. There's more to it. There's diplomatic stuff she had to go through. But if you think about, like, in terms of other people, like, I think the most we've ever seen with anybody kind of on this journey is Saavik and maybe Tilly going through these processes of trying to become captains or you know, commanders or in command. And, you know, Saavik was spending all this time on a training ship and, you know, going through all, you know, XYZ. That's literally what she's doing in the beginning of Wrath of Khan, is being trained for command. And I mean, I think that's captain, and Troy's just looking to be able to be in you know, command sometimes as a commander. She would, you know, but there's a lot of similarities, I think, there between what we see Saavik going through and her questioning, why didn't I pass this test? What did I do wrong? And like I said, even, you know, Tilly being on this command track as well. I think there's a lot of parallels there.
So
Amy.
I had an aha moment with this episode. Gummies might have been involved. But I got this light bulb, and I've seen this episode so many times. But I was watching and Troi was, getting upset that she had failed 3 times. And, Riker's like, nope, you've done it 3 times. I have to call it quits. And Riker, is having his own Kobayashi Maru at this moment where he's sacrificing Troy's desire to be command in order to save the ship, to not allow someone who isn't qualified to, take command. And I was like, oh my gosh, he has to make that decision. He has to sacrifice Deanna for the good of the ship. And that just totally paralleled Troy's story.
I don't believe that Riker meant a single word of that when he was saying, I think it was designed for a slap in the face for Deanna to make her more determined to kind of say, I will get this. If he was saying, you're never going to get it. Not to say he doesn't want to encourage her, but that kind of tough love aspect. I really think that's what Riker was doing, to say, you're so far away from the mark. You're never going to get this. You're looking in the wrong areas. So I didn't see it as Riker's problem.
No, yeah, I think it was twofold, because he was showing her the example if she was picking up on it. That's what I meant to say. Yeah.
It's that kick in the butt sometimes that people need, and he needed to nudge her to think a different way.
Yeah, definitely.
And if anybody's going to know how to nudge her into the right direction, it's going to be Riker, because they have had that close personal relationship. So he's going to know the best sort of carrot to put at the end of the stick to get her to go where he needs her to go to figure it out. So I think the writing there was perfect.
Yeah, and I think Riker failing her, so to speak, I mean, it's part of his job, as being in charge of personnel, that, I'm not going to give somebody a passing grade when they haven't passed the test. And to Amy's point, that's what's the best thing for the ship. And then there's that's what's the best thing for the ship. And then that is the line that gets Troi to think. And, anyways, I love it.
Mm-hmm. All right, listeners, there's really so much more. I have a lot of other questions, but we are up against the clock here. And I would be remiss if we didn't talk about Data's time on Barkon IV. I actually really do enjoy this episode. And when I think of Thine Own Self, for some reason, it's only Data. Well, there's a reason, because 80% of the episode's about Data. And I've always Troy's always been the secondary part, which for me is crazy. So let's talk about Data's time on Barkon IV. And what did we like about it? Is there anything going on with the Kobayashi Maru here? Christos.
I don't know about Kobayashi Maru. I will say, I think that, we'll call it the A plot, which is the Data story, and the B plot, which is obviously the Troi story. Troy story, of course, is why we remember the Troi part, is it's so important to canon. The Data stuff, I think the Data stuff starts to show the fatigue that some of Star Trek Next Generation Season 7 was experiencing. The whole part with Data reminds me of Ensigns of Command from Season 3, second episode, I believe, of TNG, where Data has to go down to a planet and he has to convince people to do something, and they kind of mob up and turn on him. And I feel like one of the reasons I've avoided this episode to a certain extent is this A plot, I feel, is a little tired, and all the action for me is in the B plot, because that's new. And so maybe that's why how I feel about this episode a little bit. But there are some amazing themes that are explored in the A plot. There's, xenophobia, hubris. There's all these really deep themes that get explored there. Kelvin, what were you going to say?
I was just going to say, when you said about things being aged a little bit, if you think of Data as a character and what the show was trying to show, it was that Data was different and he didn't fit in with the humans and he stood out. But by season 7, there's not really, Data's almost evolved to the point where, I know he's not got his emotion chip just yet, but he's accepted. So to put Data back into a scenario where he is an outsider, he is different, and that traditional Frankenstein story of being chased out of town with pitchforks, that is interesting in the context of season 7, whereas Ensigns of Command, and I love that you made that comparison, because I thought, what if they made the father a woman and they could have had that romance element? But then I thought they've done that before with Ensigns of Command. So I think Data being different as a storyline was good for season 7 of this, and that's why I liked it.
So I was watching a documentary recently on like the Salem witch trials. Obviously, it happened in my backyard here, and so what I found interesting is the way that it spread, right? And it took off essentially like within this year time frame. It started with just a couple of accusations, and all of a sudden, like it was spreading. It was going everywhere. And the reason being is because you could get out of essentially being hanged if you told on your neighbor essentially and accused somebody else of being a witch, right? So then all of a sudden it's like, oh, I don't want to get hanged. So then I'm going to say, so-and-so I don't like, they're a witch actually, and then all of a sudden, they were using all of this hearsay to just hang in the course of a year. What made me bring that up is because of the teacher element of it. When they're in the classroom and the teacher is saying, oh, the 4 elements can be found in everything: rock, sky, fire, and water. And so I was thinking about that whole time of history for, the world when we were in that place where we didn't know enough about science. And so we were looking at these things just on surface value of like, oh, well, this thing floats, so it must contain air, and this, burns, so fire is within inside of it, that kind of thing. But with that said, if they're in that time frame, and I'm circling back to Star Trek, I promise, if they're in that time frame, why, when they see Data, do they not immediately just want to rip him to pieces and accuse him of being a witch and all that stuff immediately anyway? Because he is so alien. It's not like Spock where he could wear a hat or something. His skin pigment's different, his eyes are different. He'd make that weird electronic sound at the beginning. I don't know.
But they explain it straight away by saying the Iceman, so almost the fact they are so underdeveloped as a civilization means that they do put stock into these mythological, never before seen creatures in the mountains. So they just accept that Data is one of them in that manner.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. Talur, who's the town doctor, town teacher, town smart person, apparently, her hubris is so over the top that she has to know everything. So she just explains that Data's an Iceman. That's her way of kind of keeping her position, is I got the answer for everything. And so that I feel like it fits. Amy.
Yeah, I want to say about this character as well. Considering this is a medieval village, one of the things I really liked about it is that they had such a strong female leader. And I know we talk about the hubris factor to her, and it was almost quite comical. Just having that respected, knowledgeable, in inverted commas, person in the town who was a female, I think was actually really refreshing for this story and made it very alien, because that wouldn't have happened, certainly not in medieval Britain.
One thing with Talur that has annoyed me, but then if we look at it as a lesson to us, I think it's worthy to investigate. She's the town smart person. I love that, Christos. And and she, like, right at the get-go, well, we're not going to jump to conclusions. That was, so last year. We are more civilized and we have explanations. And so here is this Iceman. Of course, that makes sense. But then later in the episode, what? There can't be particles. I can't see that. And, when we see Data with the thing, like, she freaks out. And so even being so educated and having this knowledge, you still can revert back to superstition and hearsay. And so it is a fine line. Like she's in this learning progress and trying to develop her townspeople and educating them. I mean, she is a great character and flawed. That's what I love about Talor.
Yeah.
She's the one who
I
passed the
almost-
bridge officer's test.
Yes.
That's the synergy with the Troi storyline. It's actually Talor who's the commander, achieved, but struggles to maintain, and then Deanna wants to get to that point and has to prove herself. So it's not Data and Deanna, it's Talor and Deanna in this episode.
Nice. Christos.
Yeah, I feel like Talor really does start to come around. I think she starts to really, she sees Data doing things and she gets interested, and she's almost dropping her wall a little bit and listening to Data. I feel, and you know, at the very end when Data gets the pole stabbed through him, and she gets down on the floor and she's looking at it and she kind of looks up. I almost wish she had a line at that end, because I feel like she was sad for what happened. And like one more line there, like, what did you guys do? Because this actually then flips into this other topic of not demonizing what you don't understand. And there's so much xenophobia toward Data in this episode. And when you find that when there's a lack of education, you can definitely get into this like witch hunt type situation that Mark was alluding to there. Like, there's something bad happening and we're just going to blame this guy and we're going to kill him. And, you know, and I see that's why education is so important. You know, if you flip this to our current times and politics and all this stuff, you just see these mobs forming. Oh, we don't understand gay people. We don't understand drag queens. It's awful. You know, things that people don't understand are just demonized. And those people should be rooted out of society. What's going on with trans people and all this stuff? The xenophobia is just so awful, and it all comes from ignorance.
Preach on. We need more education. That's for sure.
Education.
Okay.
That's what it is. It's the dumbing down of America. Sorry, cut that out.
Okay, let's get to some assimilations and regenerations. I've got my favorite one. Troi going to Riker's quarters to ask him if she should take the command. And, you know, Riker's practicing his trombone and is answering Troi with the little trombone. That is the cutest interaction. And then she's like, I like talking to you this way better. You know, it was a cute scene, shows their friendship, their chemistry. Obviously, they still have this relationship. Love it, love it, love it.
And a new trombone as well, because he gave his trombone to Thomas Riker at the end of Second Chances.
That is correct.
I'm going to jump to a Dr. Crusher when someone else can grab the other one here. Dr. Crusher is giving the captain's log at the beginning of the episode, in which I just love to death. And I'm going to throw in another Dr. Crusher moment and curious moment that it's Dr. Crusher and Nurse Ogawa that fix Data at the end of the episode, and there's no sign of Geordi. So I just thought that was curious, but I'm here for it.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Right?
Yeah.
Maybe she did order Geordi to his death after all. Maybe it wasn't just on the holiday.
I think it just like it just portrays Beverly as this like, you know, cyberneticist, you know what I mean? Like, and I'm here for it, but you know, and over the course of TNG and in the movies, it kind of ebbs and flows. Sometimes it's Geordi that's caring for Data, and sometimes it's Beverly. So, you know, I like that it's both of them.
Yeah. Yeah. I like at the end when Data wakes up and Troy's like, well, I'm going to go take my command, and a cute little, I think, humble brag. It's like, you can address me as sir. Yes, sir.
I think that's the first time we see Troi with the 3 pips too.
Yes, it is. Well, certainly the 3 gold ones.
Yes. Yes. Because she had 3 pips, just different colors. And I really enjoyed the thought process that was explained. Like you can tell, has this idea 2 years back in Disaster, and it's been marinating and it's been in her subconscious, and this reunion brings it out. And I so do that with like major life decisions. it takes me a long time to process, to figure out, to think about, okay, what's happened? What's going to happen if I do this or not? I loved seeing that. And again, this is why Troi is like my favorite character. I relate so much with her in this episode. Any regenerations?
I've got a few. I did like this episode, and I agree with all the assimilations. Just throwing that out there. I don't want the listeners to think that I just hated on this episode, but I have a number of regenerations for this episode. And well, I'll go right for the low hanging fruit, which is the little girl in the episode. I don't know. Just whenever kids are involved, like Alexander Rozhenko or this little girl, I'm just like, oh god, I roll. The only time I ever liked it in Trek was when it was Rascals. And kudos to the actors that played the younger versions of our favorite characters that were in Rascals, because they did fantastic. But aside from that, if it's kids in the episode, I usually skip over it.
Yeah, Mark, I'm looking at one of your other regenerations here, and I'm so glad you put it, because the guy that plays the blacksmith, and I believe his name is, we'll call him out, man. We're going to call him out, Michael G. Haggerty. His acting is so awful. He's the one who kind of leads the mob. He's the blacksmith. He's the one that kind of gets everyone all riled up against Data and everything. But it's so over the top and predictable that it almost takes me out of the episode. It's like the Klingon in The Chase. He just, it's like every once in a while, they just get a bad actor.
That actor was actually in Star Trek again. He was in Deep Space Nine and he played a Klingon. So there you go. Maybe they give all the Klingon roles to the bad actors. Apart from Michael
There's Kelvin showing his DS9 knowledge again.
I was going to say, I think it could be better if it was just had some peaks and valleys. They talk about that a lot. If you guys watch RuPaul's Drag Race, when they're giving acting, input, it's like if it's just one note, it's very noticeable. But if there was a little bit of just inflection with his dialogue, it would have gone so far. But you got to blame the director too for not bringing that out of the actor.
Winringe Kabul, as Janeway pronounces his name very deliberately.
So another thing that takes me out of the episode is the choice that the writers made to have Data remember some definitions of words and some not. Like, he doesn't know what radioactive means, but yet is having his conversation and talking about elements and UV lights and blah, blah, blah. Like, I understand what they're doing. And yes, we have to have communication, but it sure was.
It was too selective.
Yes, very selective. Yes, thank you. All right, guys. Well, let's get to some trivia. So Hutton, who pitched the idea, launched it as Data as Frankenstein, and Jerry Taylor described it as irresistible. Ronald D. Moore joked, he wanders into a medieval village, is befriended by a little girl, and villagers come out and chase him with torches. Well, yep, that's the story.
This is Riker's fourth undercover operation, and the only one that doesn't turn out terribly for him. Can you name the previous 3 episodes? Okay, so I know First Contact is one. Are we counting? You guys want to jump in another one?
Who watches the Watchers?
Who watches the Watchers? Yes. Who watches the Watchers? First Contact. I don't know. Kelvin, I'm sure you know.
I actually only had the Mintarkans and Malkorians because I was thinking back to my action figures because they used to always love doing that one.
I'm
so
just
the
trying to
fourth
think
one,
of.
I'm struggling with the fourth one.
I mean, if you
Mark,
think about it,
any guesses? Okay, the third one is Frame of Mind.
Yes.
Okay. Wow.
Everybody
That's
knows
a
my
good
memory's
one,
not so
Amy.
good.
Do I get 2/3 a point?
Yes, you do. 2 points. Well, I guess, yeah.
So another little bit of trivia from this episode is that it was Jonathan Frakes who wanted to refer to Diana Azimzadeh in the trombone scene that we were talking about earlier. It's the final time he says it in the series. and he's not said it since Second Chances. So again, this is more reflective of the actors. We're in season 7. They know their characters a little bit more, and they had that freedom to interact. So yeah, Jonathan Frakes changing the dialogue to refer to her as Imzadi, I think was a great touch.
Oh, I was just going to say that it speaks a lot about where society is at that point in human history and evolution, where, you know, you can still refer to somebody as your beloved, essentially, even though you're not necessarily romantically involved. It's like, yeah, you admit you still have this connection, this love, this compassion for this other person. You get them on a spiritual level, yet you don't have to be dating. You don't have to be in this relationship. And their relationship is at that point where they still have this mutual love and respect and admiration for each other, this understanding, but they don't need to be dating.
Yeah.
That's what I got out of it.
Good point. Good point.
Amy, I love your last one here.
Yes.
You say
So
it.
this episode is the final appearance of Troi's maroon jumpsuit, which is something that I own. And we had a fabulous picture of Troi and 1,000 Rikers on the cruise. However, it's the final time we see it. Do you remember the first episode where the maroon jumpsuit was introduced? Christos?
I'm going to guess it's the first episode of season 2, which is The Child.
You are correct.
Yay! I just do it as a season
Yay!
2 thing. It's when they got her out of that terrible season 1 costume.
I love this trivia where Patrick Stewart appears only once in the episode because he was taking time off to appear in his one-man version of A Christmas Carol in London. He has only one line at the very end, and this is also cool because it connects to the animated series. Outside of the animated series, the slaver weapon, where Kirk does not appear at all. This is the briefest appearance by a series lead, the only other candidate being Cisco in the episode The Wire, where he has 3 lines of dialogue. And yeah, I thought that was really cool and really kind of, you know, ballsy of the writers to create this script where all of the other characters get this time to shine. And, you know, the series lead steps back a little bit. And so I thought that was kind of cool. Something we don't see often.
I noticed this myself. And it's sad that the only reason it happened was because he had something else to do. But so many times you see Picard's character get forced into the story because they need to give the star of the show X amount of time. And I love the fact, I mean, that, you know, this episode is just allowed to happen. And I think we wouldn't nearly get the focus on the other characters otherwise. So, yeah, I wish we would have seen a little bit more. Amy.
So this is season 7. What season would this be on Deep Space Nine? 5?
2. Episode 2.
Yeah.
Oh.
Episode 2. Season 2. Sorry.
Season
We're saying episode 2.
2? Oh.
Yeah.
It started in 6?
See, yeah, midway through season 6.
Oh,
January
no,
92.
sorry. So, yeah, season 2 and season 7 are both set in 2370.
Okay.
Yep.
So the reason I ask is because on the cruise, listening to Terry Farrell talk and explain why she left Star Trek goes to this trivia point. She said that all the other male actors were able to go off and do side projects. When she asked to go do a side project, she was told no, even though there were times where she wasn't in an episode. They wouldn't allow her to go out. And here we have Patrick Stewart, the lead, going off to London to do A Christmas Carol. That he had that opportunity and she did not. Christos.
That's actually the reason Will Wheaton asked to leave the show finally, was he had an opportunity to go do a movie. Rick Berman said, "Oh no, you're pivotal to this next episode," blah blah blah, and then they made him back him out, and then he really wasn't in the episode. So, and also if you go back to the beginning of TNG, Gates McFadden was actually doing a play in San Diego during the beginning while Encounter at Farpoint, and I believe the first episode were filmed. So that's why she's a little bit less in the pilot. Kelvin.
There was an example on the cruise as well, and I can't remember the actor who was saying it, but they mentioned about the block acting, how they kind of put all of his scenes for multiple episodes because they would shoot out of sequence. They brought everything together so that they could release him to travel to the other side of America or even Canada to film something else or do a play. And everyone was talking about, oh my God, you must have been working crazy, crazy hours. But actually, when you reflect it back to what you've just said about Terry Farrell, it's quite scandalous. And if it was purely the sexism card, that makes it even worse. Poor Terry.
Final thoughts. Thine own self. What an amazing discussion you had, you guys. And we could have gone on, I'm telling you, for a whole nother hour talking about this command test. And like you were saying at the top, Christos, the importance to canon that this little B plot story is so important. And then this data, So I'm so glad that we had the chance to discuss this Kobayashi, non-Kobayashi Maru moment.
I'll just say I love the episode. Obviously, prefer the B story to the A story. I love, like I said, the importance to canon. I love this actually makes things make sense that when when the Enterprise D is going down and Riker it's Troi, take the helm, or Deanna, that all goes. It just all makes sense because she's had this extra training. It all kind of pulls it together.
I think this is a great episode as well. I've always been fond of this episode. I wouldn't call it a guilty pleasure because I don't think there's too much guilt in it. It's just a kind of a lesser popular episode. But overall, I think it's a very mature episode in the writing, the way the characters interact with each other, the small talk. It's very well written dialogue. And yeah, I even like the Data storyline as well. The idea of being chased out of town with pitchforks is it resonates a little. So I like it. I think it's a great episode. Great choice.
Well, I'm glad everybody liked it. This episode for me, it's funny. I picked the majority of the episodes that we watch on our watch list, and this is probably the least favorite I think I've picked out of all of them. But I needed to shoehorn some sort of Kobayashi Maru story in there. It was TNG related. I knew Amy would like it. In particular, it was Troi centric, at least with the B plot. On the rewatch, I really appreciated the B plot so much. It almost makes up for the A plot being a little. I'm not so sold on the Data plot line in there, and I love Data as a character. Not my favorite, but the B plot is so good and so meaty. It really should have been the A plot, and I think that's what saves the episode. And I'm glad we spent most of the time talking about that because, for me in particular, I think that was the most interesting part of the whole thing, and I loved it. Yeah,
absolutely agree, Mark. I wish that, in fact, in many sense, if you actually did not even have the A plot and you made a whole story, the whole episode was more low stakes about Troi and the whole thing, maybe how other people are helping her, or maybe she goes to Geordi for advice or goes to Data for advice.
Mm-hmm.
I think you could have easily have gotten to 45 minutes out of Troi trying to pass this test, and actually would have been a little bit more believable in the sense, like I said, it all felt a little too rushed.
Yeah.
Amy.
Well, think about Wesley and his command test or getting into Starfleet. Like that episode was, what's the name of that episode?
That was season 1.
Yeah. And
Coming of age.
Yes, coming of age. And that was his story. And it's like, come on. And we get 20-30% of an episode dedicated to Troi doing it, where Wesley gets a whole episode.
What we need? We need an episode of Enterprise where we go into the holodeck and see Troi doing everything she needs to do to pass this test.
Yes.
little Pegasus.
Oh,
Right.
Too soon.
Yeah, Amy, you need to write
Right.
that fan fiction that fills in the rest of Troy's arc in this episode, and we'll see what we can do. We'll make it a comic book made or something.
Yeah. Well, Mark, what are we talking about next week?
Well, next week we are going to talk about our Undercover series, Part 4. and we'll be discussing we discussed Picard a lot lately, but we're going to go back to season 2. So this is a Picard episode called 2 of 1. And this is such a magical romp of an episode. I love it in so many ways. You have the really great interaction between Seven and Raffi, of course. You have the whole Jurati Queen dynamic. And, rest in peace, the actress that played the Borg Queen. She recently passed, but she is in full force in this episode. And oh, it's beautiful. And then when Alison Pill gets up there and starts singing, gives me goosebumps. So I just can't wait for us all to relive this fantastic episode together.
That was a great build-up. I'm excited to listen.
You don't have to sell it to us. We're showing up no matter what.
Well, listeners, we would love to hear what you thought of today's episode and hope you'll join our Facebook group, the BQN Collective, to continue our discussion there. You can also tweet your thoughts at AllGoodPod. Please follow the network on Twitter and Instagram at BQN Podcast. We've also partnered with our friends at the Fandom Podcast Network, where you can find us by searching their master feed. So, Mark, where can people find you when you are answering via trombone?
Ooh, so much I could say about that.
I thought so.
I'd be good with the trombone. Anyway, when I'm not doing that, you can find me in the BQN Collective Facebook page. You can also follow me on Twitter at MarkWhite207. Or if you become a patron of the network on Patreon, you can listen to my show, It's Green. And that's an awful lot of fun. And what's your name? Jaden? I'm going to call you Jaden. Where can people find you online?
I'm assuming you're addressing me just by kind of following the outline. But when I'm not going around calling myself Jaden, you can find me in the BQN Collective on Facebook, or you can go to Twitter and/or Instagram and find me at Kelvin's Timeline. Christos, where can people find you when you're not searching for fire in your wood?
Oh boy. You're glad I'm not drinking coffee or anything here. I would just landed all over the computer screen. Whew. Fire in my wood is not a good thing. I might have to go see a Talor for a little bit
cream
of
for that.
medicine or something. Man, it's not a... Look, Beverly, what do you got for this? You can find me in the BQN Collective on Facebook and at Greek Geek SD on Instagram and Twitter, and as well as at What's the T-Bev on Instagram and Twitter. And next week, folks, What's the T-Bev returns for season 2. So I hope you are still subscribed. And Amy, where can people find you when you're not sending Geordie LaForge off to his death?
Well, when I am not doing that, and if it did, it would only be on the holodeck, just as Troi. You can find me here on the network where I'm co-hosting Galaxy Class, which talks about Next Generation, and we are currently covering season 3 of Picard, because basically it is a Next Gen season. Also Union Federation, where, yes, we are covering Star Trek Picard over there as well. I am on Twitter at Miss Amy Nelson, but my favorite place right there in the BQN Collective. Please hit the subscribe button on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts and leave us a star rating and written review. That helps others to find our show. You can also follow the entire network's podcast with our master feed by searching BQN. This way you won't miss any of our fine shows like Union Federation, Galaxy Class, History with the Szilagys, Infinite Diversity, Mickey's Marvels, Sasquatch, What's the T-Bev, and Trexperts Quiz.
At this time, we would like to thank our associate producers, Mahendran Radhakrishnan and Tim Cooper. Special thanks to Graham Kelly for our opening and closing music, and to our very own Mark White for our artwork each and every week.
If you'd like to help us keep our shows coming to you each week, you can become a patron of the network on Patreon. We will add you to the Hive Mind Facebook group so you can enjoy It's Green, Amy's Math Moments, and other network perks. With a monthly subscription of $5 or more, you can join our meetings of the Hive Mind Roundtable discussion on the second Saturday of each month. Visit patreon.com/BQN to get all the details and watch your messages.
Thank you for listening.
We hope you'll join us
As we search out
All good things.